book friends, how are you? I'm so excited because we're going to talk about one of my very favorite authors today. I want to also start by saying I've got the dryer going in the laundry room. I'm hoping you don't hear it, but if you hear an occasional knock, just know it's the dryer and I'm not ignoring anybody. Today's book is titled Resist You by the amazing KL Shandwick. I'm just such a fan of hers. I absolutely fell in love with the very first book of hers that I read. She's got a bunch of books, so I'm totally late to the party with her, but I immediately fell in love with the way she writes and her characters and the story. So this is the Unchained Attraction duets. The first duet is the Dare Duet, which is Dare You and Dare Me. I did videos on those. I will of course include them in the description box below. And now we have the second duet, the Resist Duets, which is Resist You and Resist Me. A little background on the Dare You, Dare Me duet is that it's about Sawyer and Billy. Sawyer knocked me off my feet. I think I even cried. Well, I kind of cry in a lot of my videos, but the way she wrote him spoke to me on like an elemental level. I had never experienced a character like Sawyer before. He makes me speechless. Billy was an amazing character as well. There's a maturity about her characters in these duets that I really connect with. I was very excited to read the Resist Duets because we found out pretty quick that it was going to be on James and Tricia. James is Sawyer's brother. They have a few siblings. And then Tricia is Billy's best friend. We are introduced to them in the Dare Duet, and now here's their books. I was immediately very excited to know that we were going to get more about Tricia. I really liked her in the previous books. She was the kind of friend that you would want to have. Billy and Tricia are both in their 40s at the time of their books. And then James is closer to Tricia and Billy's age, and he's Sawyer's older brother. Does that make sense? I really like that because I myself am in that age bracket, might even be a little bit older now. So there's something that I really connect with as far as stories that are written about people my age. I have to be honest that I wasn't really sure about James in the Dare Duet. We know that some major conflict went down between Sawyer and James and really the whole family over something that James had done. He was ostracized from the family because of it. But by the end of the Dare Duet, we do know that they start to get back on track and are trying to rebuild their relationship. That part of the book really touched my heart. I'm all for a second chance with everyone in life, unless something, well, and what he did was pretty heinous. But that being said, there's a reason why he did it. And also, I guess I should probably say right now, because there are previous books and those characters have a lot to do with these characters, I don't want you to get spoilers, so no, it's not my intent, but if you haven't read those books and you watch this video, you might get a spoiler. I apologize, so just know that. Tricia, like I mentioned, is in her 40s. She has a kick-ass career. She's a super smart woman. She's done very well for herself. She's very independent, fiercely independent. Definitely seems to be the fun and flirty woman that maybe eats men for dinner a little bit. I loved the relationship that she had with Billy, and that has continued in this book. James, he has, in coming back and making amends in the family, been brought into the family business. He's very successful. They're both very successful. He's at a point in life where, and this kind of surprised me, he hasn't really dated anyone in a couple years. He had a really rough go with a woman that really turned him inside out and turned his life upside down. If you've read the previous books, you know who I'm talking about and what that situation is. So he was like, you know, I'm just gonna kind of not date anyone, not be with anyone. There is an attraction that is undeniable with him and Tricia when they meet, but I wasn't really sure how KL was gonna put them together. I couldn't see, because I didn't know that much about James, I couldn't see how they would, if they were just gonna hook up and be like a one and done type thing. I just wasn't sure where we were going with that and how she was going to intertwine their lives. Resist You overlaps a bit with the timeline of the Dare Duet. We see glimpses of Sawyer and Billy's wedding. It seems to be that's the first time that Tricia and James really do hook up. We also hear mentions of them at other times that I remembered from the other book, of when Billy and Sawyer were like, what's going on over here? So the timelines overlap a little bit, and then we move into the future and away from the Dare books. The book starts out with they're at Billy and Sawyer's wedding, and I loved the wedding. Oh, makes me even a little teary just to think about it. But we're seeing it from James and Tricia's perspective. And boy, KL did not waste any time with the sexy time, because we literally start the book off with a bang. And just as quickly as we started off in this sexy, fun, hot interlude between Tricia and James, then all of a sudden I was like, oops, okay, didn't expect that. When I glanced back towards the bed, Tricia had fallen asleep like she hadn't a care in the world, obviously exhausted as she had said she was. Regret and disappointment filled me with anger, and I knew I had to get out of there before I let her know how I felt. There had been plenty of times in my life where I'd been used, but it was the first time I'd ever felt as low as I did after sharing a bed with her. Humiliation cut through me, and I closed my eyes as the knot already present in my stomach tightened. Forcing myself to take one last glance towards her had felt like a punch at my chest again. Slipping quietly from her room, I heard the door latch sink as I stared down the landing in disbelief and shook my head. The player had been played. Okay then. It was at that moment that I was like, this is going to be interesting. The book then picks up several years later. They both seem to have moved on. James has been invited to a party at Sawyer's really good friend Hammer's house, and he brings his new live-in girlfriend, Juliet. Okay, who's Juliet? We get the gaps filled in a little bit from James's perspective about the previous 2 years and the time that he had spent with Tricia after the time I just talked about. And it becomes really clear that James wanted more from Tricia. And Tricia just kind of kept him at arm's length away. She never let them get past the physicality that they had in spades. And at some point, James decides he's too old for that crap. He wants more from a relationship. He can't deny that she makes him feel things that he's never felt before. But he's kind of like, okay, well, she's not that into me. And this is what he says. Tricia swears I had initiated that session by pecking her cheek and touching her hand in the kitchen when I'd arrived, but I disagreed, because it had been her idea to go to her house when I'd been prepared to go home. Looking back, there was never a choice that night, because the lust and attraction we had was mutual. But after the fiery chemistry and deep connection I felt we'd share that night, I drew a line when afterward she acted cold and blew me off again. That time, I didn't roll over and leave, because by then I'd made up my mind I liked Tricia, really liked her. In fact, I thought I may even have loved her by then, and her cold and controlling behavior was maybe just an act. But when I tried to talk to her about why she was resisting what I knew we both felt, she immediately shut me out. When I left her that night and got back in my car, the ache in my heart felt heavy, and something told me instinctively she was determined not to change. Admitting that to myself was tough, but the first rule to a problem is a solution. Business had taught me that. My problem with Tricia Madison was that I liked her a little too much. Acknowledging my feelings for her was hard, and once I had been honest with myself about that, the only solution I saw going forward was to deliberately avoid her. Life had felt difficult enough at that time without chasing complicated, effed up women. So we get a little insight into what happened between them and when James put the brakes on it for himself. I really liked how KL kind of flipped the script a little bit with us, in that it was James that was a bit brokenhearted, the male character. So often in the books that we read, it's the female that's kind of left behind, and that it's the male character that has to come to terms with his feelings for her. And that was different in this book, and I really liked that. Don't get me wrong, there is an element of chase with them, but I thought about this the other day. It's not chase, it's resistance, hence the title. He decides he's not going to chase her and tries to move on from her. And she is constantly resisting how he makes her feel because of her own issues that we learn a lot more about. And I really liked the fact that their relationships seemed to get built on reckoning and admitting and not resisting anymore and coming to terms with your life and what you want out of life. And I felt like that really tied in really well with their ages and where they were in their lives. My curiosity was so highly piqued as to what was going on with Tricia and how she could resist him. I really, really liked James. Really liked James. And let me just tell you, the apple doesn't fall far from the brother tree. That is for certain, because I loved Sawyer. And James and Sawyer are having a conversation about James's new girlfriend. And this is what Sawyer says. And oh, I was reminded why I love him. It's a surprise that James shows up with Juliet at the party. And so Sawyer grills him a little bit about it. And this is their conversation. "Do I detect rings and wedding bells?" Sawyer asked me, nodding towards the direction she'd gone again. "F no. What's the rush? It's only been weeks since she moved in." "Sawyer, not months." "I'm not all like you, bro. Some of us are more guarded with our single status." "Bullshit. When you know," he replied, flashing me a smug grin as he brought his beer bottle to his lips and his eyes instinctively scanned the yard for Billy. "I like her," I admitted, after shrugging my shoulders when he silently scrutinized me with his curious eyes until I felt uncomfortable. A frown creased his brow at my response. "F James." He shook his head, looked at his feet, then his eyes snapped back up and met mine. "No wonder women can't keep their hands off your dick." "And that would be why exactly?" I asked, eyeing my brother with caution. "The store has closed, so no one can buy into your feelings," he said, poking my chest. "I do have feelings for Jules," I replied hesitantly, my words choppy as I tried to quantify it in terms to myself. "Well, I hope you can express them a bit more than that, dude, because feelings aren't exactly how you describe someone you love." "All right, smartass, tell me what I'm missing. What do you think when you look at Billy?" "That's easy. I see the love of my life, my gorgeous little ball of wonder. When I see her, I can't keep my eyes off of her. My heart melts when I see her holding my kids in her arms, and it swells tight. When she looks at me and I stare into the depths of her soul, it's the most serene feeling. When that happens, it's just her and me, and we're all that matters." "You sound the part of a lyricist with those comments," I scoffed, but his description of his life with Billy sounded nice. Sawyer shrugged, and his eyes filled with angst. "I feel desperately protective of her, and there isn't one single thing that I wouldn't do to keep her from being hurt," he chuckled. Flip that, and on the other end of the spectrum, I want to effing devour her because she fires me up inside. Whoa, Sawyer, that's some heavy shit. If you don't feel all that, bro, he shrugged and ground out his warning. And then Juliet walks up to them. Ugh. I love Sawyer. Obviously, at some point, James and Tricia are forced to deal with their feelings for each other. So much of this book is them figuring all that out, and I loved, that's like the meat of the stories for me. I love the voice KL gives her relationships, how thoughtful and real that her relationships play out for me. We learned so much about Tricia in this book. There's a lot to her behind the exterior that she gives everybody, and there's things that Billy doesn't even know that she struggles to tell James about. A big part of Tricia is trust, especially the closest people in her lives. And there's a big part of this book that I feel like if I share with you, it will be a spoiler. So I can't share that with you, but I loved where KL took the story. I was really surprised by it, and it helped me connect even deeper to them because what she brings from Tricia and some things Tricia experienced in her life as a teenager and later at the present day of the book is something that I have a very close connection with as well in my own family. So I really ate all that up, and it made me super emotional. It made me really feel for Tricia, and I loved watching James bloom in, do guys bloom? I don't know if that's the right word, but watch him maybe become the man that he is destined to be because of her love and what they figure out and how they work on their relationship and everything. I loved how in tune he was with her and how he took care of her. I loved watching her be able to trust him finally. And there was a particularly swoony and beautiful moment when Tricia's had kind of a rough time. I love you taking care of me, she admitted, turning and sliding her arms around my waist. You wanted a girlfriend and look what you got. Don't you want to run away yet? Smoothing the crease between her brows with my fingertip, I dropped my forehead on hers, and my heart leapt at the sudden connection that grew between us. That little spark between us gave me the confidence I needed to know everything would work out okay. All that mattered was we were together. I was behind her quest for the truth 100%. I wouldn't swap you for the world, I muttered, nodding my nose gently against hers. Tricia swallowed audibly, and tears sprang to her eyes. Why? Looking as if she could hardly believe what I said. Because my heart is yours, Tricia, and I can't live without one unless I'm with you. Damn, James, how come you always know the right thing to say? I don't. I believe you have me confused with my little brother. Uh-huh. I replied and chuckled because Sawyer was the romantic in the family. But let me tell you, James, like I said, apple doesn't fall far from the brother tree. So there's kind of a cliffhanger, I mean, yes, we know there's a second book, and it leaves off at a very specific time where you're like, so yes, it's a cliffhanger. But you know how I felt? I felt like it was, instead of it being a cliffhanger, it was like KL getting us ready for the next part in their journey, their next chapter, literally. Let me know if you have read Resist You or the Dare Duet or what other of KL's books you have read. I have literally all of them on my TBR. I just need to buckle down and read them. Thank you for taking a moment to hit the like button and also consider subscribing. When you do that, it not only helps my channel, but it also helps this video get shown to more people on YouTube. Stay tuned for Resist Me, which is the next book in the series, which comes out next month, and I will definitely be doing a video on it. Thanks for hanging out with me today, guys. I'll see you soon. Bye.